Greetings, shooters and reloaders. So if you've been watching my videos and you've thought about reloading and maybe you've decided to jump in and give it a try, and you're maybe making a shopping list of the things you need to order, I thought maybe I would quickly go over some of them so that you can order without forgetting anything. So to start with, you'll need dies. If you're going to load pistol, make sure you get carbide dies so you don't have to lube the cases. And again, if you're just starting out, I'd recommend going with the Lee dies, Lee Precision. You're going to get your best bang for your buck there with their dies. For rifle dies, I'd get the what do they call it? Pace setter die set. And what I like about that is it comes with a factory crimp die, which is kind of nice. But for starting out, I think you can't beat those. Next, you're going to need some kind of method for cleaning your brass. So either a vibratory tumbler or a wet tumbler or a ultrasonic cleaner, your choice. All I've ever used is a vibratory cleaner, but I've recently bought an ultrasonic, and I've only tried it once, and so the verdict is still out on that. I'll let you know what I think of that after I use it a few times. The other thing you're going to need is a powder scale of some kind. Now, this is a beam scale. This is all I've ever used. This one happens to be made by Pacific, which they don't exist anymore. Now it's Hornady. But I actually bought this one from a friend of mine back in it must have been late 70s, early 80s I bought it, and I don't know how long he had it. So it's been around a long time and it still works just fine. I think for accuracy and consistency, you can't beat a beam scale. But nowadays, a lot of people are using the electronic scales, and those will work just fine. And you can pick those up pretty reasonable. So whichever you choose to use there is up to you. But this is all I've ever used is a old-fashioned beam scale, and it works just fine. The next thing you're going to need is some measuring tools. Either a pair of calipers or a set of micrometers, up to you. The micrometers are quite a bit more expensive. You can pick up some pretty decent calibers at a reasonable price. These happen to be made by Hornady, and they're digital. So I like them because they're fast and easy to read. The micrometer, while I think it's more accurate, takes a little more skill in how to use it and read it. But they both work just fine. The other thing you're going to need is a method of trimming your brass. Now, I use one of these, which is pretty simple. This goes into a shell holder that I put in a drill, and then this turns and it shaves off, the correct amount of brass there. It works okay, but it's the slowest, but it's also the cheapest. Lee makes these. You buy a set like this. They're relatively inexpensive. I don't remember how much they are, but they're pretty inexpensive. But you just get whatever you're reloading for, get that set. And that'll work okay for you for getting started. I prefer, though, if I'm going to do a large quantity of trimming, I prefer to use the Lee Quick Trim die, which is a die like this that actually fits into a single stage press, and that is a faster way of trimming. Trimming is the one thing that all reloaders hate doing the most, but it's a necessary step that you have to do from time to time. You don't have to do it every time you reload, but that's where the calipers will come in handy. You can check the length, the case length. See, now I just trimmed this, and I have my calipers set to the length that I want them trimmed to. And See how it fits in there now? Perfect. Here's one I haven't trimmed and won't go in. So I need to trim this one. So it's a step you have to do from time to time, but what you want to do is just check your brass before you load it to make sure that it's at the proper length. That's very important. The next thing you're going to need is a powder measurer. And this is all I've ever used. And this one happens to be made by RCBS. And it works just fine. And at some point in time, maybe I'll do a video on how to set this up to use it. But you'll definitely need a powder measurer of some kind, unless you're going to weigh every single charge on your scale. That's up to you. The other thing you're going to need then is manuals for load data. So everybody who's in the powder or bullet business produces some manuals. And it's important to have several sets of manuals, because you want to do cross references, because occasionally you'll run into some conflicting data. And when that happens, I always try to take the data, the information from the powder manufacturer rather than the bullet manufacturer. For instance, this manual is by Hornady. Well, they make bullets. And it's a good manual, has a lot of information in it, and I use it a lot. This manual happens to be made by the Western Powder Company. So they're in the powder business. I usually take their data. If it conflicts with the bullet company's data, I'll take the powder company's data over the bullet company's data. They're making the powder. I figure they better know more about it than anybody else. So you'll need several. I like to have at least 2, maybe 3 manuals. I think I have about 5 or 6 different manuals, but it's important to have a number of manuals. Now, try to get an up-to-date manual. However, there are times where an older manual is advantageous. So this is a manual that I picked up at a gun show, pretty reasonable, but it's an old one. I think it's from like the 60s. But the reason I bought it is I inherited some powder from my father that's from that time period. And it's still good powder, still usable, but they don't make that powder anymore. It's called Hi-Vel number 2, made by Hercules, which Hercules Powder Company doesn't exist anymore. They were bought by, I think it was Alliant Company. But anyway, I couldn't find any load data for that powder, so I had to find an old manual from the 1960s in order to find the proper load data that I needed. So there are times where an old manual comes in handy, but for the most part, I'd say find an up-to-date one for current loads that you're doing. That's all I can think of for right now. That should get you started, and make a list and order what you need and get going. You'll need components: bullet, powder, primer. Some of that's a little bit hard to come by right now due to the COVID situation, but normally it's not a problem. But as long as you have the components on hand and you have the equipment and the know-how to do it, you can manufacture your own ammunition and oftentimes make ammo better than and more accurate than what you can buy. So that's all for now. So stay safe, shoot straight, keep your powder dry, and I'll see you on the range.